Ready to explore. JustProfessor here. A gorilla walks through a basketball game. You're watching the players pass the ball. The gorilla stops in the middle, beats its chest, and walks off. You never see it, not because you weren't looking, but because your brain deleted it from your awareness completely. You think you see everything in your field of vision. You don't. Your brain only processes a tiny portion of what your eyes take in, and it completely ignores the rest. This is called visual neglect, and it's not a rare condition or a disorder. It's how normal vision works for everyone. Right now, you're missing huge amounts of visual information that's directly in front of you. Your brain is filtering it out before it reaches your awareness, and this invisible blindness is causing you to miss critical information, make dangerous mistakes, and walk through life seeing far less than you think you see. Visual neglect is when your brain fails to process visual information even though your eyes are working perfectly and the information is clearly visible. This happens because attention is limited. You can't consciously process everything you see at once, so your brain selects what seems important and ignores everything else. The ignored information never reaches your awareness. You don't see it even though it's right there in your visual field. This creates a gap between what you think you see and what you actually see. You feel like you have full awareness of your surroundings. Your vision seems complete and continuous, but it's not. Most of what's in front of you gets filtered out. Your brain only shows you the parts it decides matter based on what you're focusing on. Everything else gets deleted from your conscious experience. The dangerous part is you don't know what you're missing. The neglected information doesn't appear as blank spots or blurred areas. It simply doesn't exist in your awareness. Your brain fills in the gaps with assumptions so your visual experience feels complete. You walk around confident that you're seeing everything important, while actually missing obvious things that could matter a lot. This isn't about eye problems or inattention in the casual sense. Your eyes work fine. You're paying attention. But attention has a spotlight quality. It illuminates some things while leaving others in darkness. The things outside the spotlight don't just fade into the background. They disappear completely from your conscious perception even though they're physically visible. Let me show you how visual neglect causes problems you probably don't realize you're having. Driving is full of visual neglect accidents. You look both ways before pulling out. You're being careful. But a motorcycle is coming and you pull out anyway. You swear it wasn't there, but it was there. Your brain was focused on looking for cars, so motorcycles got filtered out. The motorcycle was in your visual field but outside your attention spotlight. Visual neglect made it invisible even though you were looking right at it. This happens constantly with pedestrians and cyclists too. Drivers look but do not see, because their brain is filtering for certain types of objects and ignoring others. The pedestrian or cyclist is visible but gets neglected by the attentional system. The driver genuinely believes they checked carefully because they did check. But visual neglect meant checking wasn't enough. Phone use creates massive visual neglect. You're looking at your phone while walking. You think you can see where you're going with peripheral vision, but your attention is on the screen, which means almost everything else gets neglected. People walk into poles, trip over obstacles, and step into traffic because visual neglect made the physical world invisible while their attention was captured by the phone. The neglect is so complete that people often don't remember what they walked past while looking at their phone. The information never entered awareness in the first place. Their eyes scanned the environment, but their brain deleted it all except the phone screen. Change blindness is an extreme form of visual neglect. Something significant changes in a scene and you don't notice. Not because the change was subtle, because your attention was on that part of the scene when it changed. Studies show people miss huge, obvious changes. A person's shirt color, objects appearing or disappearing, entire background elements swapping, if the change happens when their attention is elsewhere. This means you can look directly at something, look away briefly, look back at it, and completely miss that it changed dramatically. Your brain assumes things stay the same between glances unless you're specifically watching for changes. Visual neglect fills in the scene based on memory and expectation rather than current visual input. Security and safety depend on seeing threats, but visual neglect makes threats invisible. Security personnel watching monitors miss obvious suspicious behavior because their attention can't cover everything simultaneously. Airport screeners miss prohibited items in bags. Lifeguards miss struggling swimmers, not because they're not trying, because attention limitations mean visual neglect is unavoidable when you're trying to monitor complex visual scenes. The more you need to watch, the more visual neglect affects you. If you're looking for 10 different types of threats, each one gets less attention, which means neglect increases for all of them. This is why even trained professionals with good intentions miss obvious dangers. Reading creates visual neglect for typos and errors. You proofread your own writing and miss obvious mistakes. Not because you didn't read carefully, because your attention is on meaning, so the specific letters and words get partially neglected. Your brain fills in what should be there based on expectation. The actual text that exists gets neglected in favor of the text your brain expects to see. This is why you can read sentences with jumbled middle letters or missing words without noticing. Your brain is neglecting the specific visual details and constructing meaning from partial information. It works for comprehension, but makes you blind to errors. Social situations involve constant visual neglect that affects your understanding. You talk to someone and notice their facial expression and words, but you completely miss their body language, what's happening behind them, or changes in their appearance. Your attention spotlight covers their face because that's where social information usually comes from. Everything else gets neglected. Later, someone mentions, "Did you see how uncomfortable they looked?" Or, "Did you notice their new haircut?" And you realize you saw none of it. The information was visible, but your attentional focus neglected it completely. Medical diagnosis gets affected by visual neglect in dangerous ways. Doctors look at scans and X-rays searching for specific problems. They find what they're looking for, but miss other visible abnormalities because those weren't in the attention spotlight. Radiologists sometimes miss tumors that are clearly visible in images because their attention was focused on the area they expected the problem to be. This isn't incompetence, it's the limitation of attention. You can only consciously process a fraction of visual information at once. The rest gets neglected even when it's important. Witness testimony is unreliable partly because of visual neglect. You witness a crime or accident. You saw it happen. But when you try to describe details, you realize you missed most of it. What the person was wearing, other people present, vehicle details, sequence of events, these got neglected because your attention was captured by the most dramatic elements. Your brain fills in missing details with assumptions, creating false confidence about what you saw. You remember seeing things you actually neglected and reconstructed later. Technology interfaces exploit visual neglect intentionally. Important information gets buried in places users typically neglect. Terms and conditions, privacy policies, fees, and restrictions. These appear on screen but get placed outside the typical attention spotlight. Companies know visual neglect will make most users miss these details even though they're technically visible. Dark patterns in design deliberately guide attention toward desired actions while keeping unwanted information in neglected areas of the visual field. So, how do you see better when your brain is built to neglect most visual information? How do you catch what your attention naturally misses? First, accept that you're missing a lot. Your feeling of complete visual awareness is an illusion. You're only seeing the small portion your attention illuminates. Everything else is being neglected. This awareness makes you more careful about assuming you've seen everything important. Second, actively move your attention around. Don't just glance at a scene and trust that you saw it. Systematically scan different areas. Each time you shift attention, you'll see things that were neglected before. What was invisible becomes visible when the attention spotlight moves to it. Third, look multiple times for critical decisions. One look isn't enough because of visual neglect. Look, shift attention. Look again from a different focus. Check for cars, then specifically check for motorcycles and bikes, then check for pedestrians. Each focused search reduces neglect for that category. Fourth, minimize distractions that capture attention. When your attention gets locked on your phone or a conversation or internal thoughts, visual neglect for everything else becomes extreme. In situations where seeing matters, walking, driving, navigating, protect your attention from capture. Fifth, use systematic search patterns for important visual tasks. Random looking leaves room for neglect. Systematic patterns ensure attention covers all areas. Pilots use standardized scan patterns. Drivers should too. Any situation where missing something matters needs systematic attention management. Sixth, be suspicious of change blindness. When you look away and back, don't assume everything is the same as before. Actively check for changes because visual neglect makes you miss them otherwise. This matters for security, supervision of kids, monitoring any dynamic situation. Seventh, get second opinions for important visual judgments. Another person's attention will neglect different things than yours. Two people looking at the same scene catch more than one person because their attention patterns differ. For anything critical, medical images, safety checks, proofreading, multiple viewers reduce overall neglect. Visual neglect is making you miss obvious information right in front of your eyes. You think you see your surroundings completely, but you only see the small portion your attention happens to be focused on. Everything else gets filtered out before reaching awareness. Your brain creates the illusion of complete vision by filling in neglected areas with assumptions, so you don't realize how much you're missing. This creates real dangers. You miss threats while feeling confident you're being observant. You overlook details while believing you're paying attention. You fail to notice changes, errors, and important information that's clearly visible. All because attention limitations mean most of your visual field must be neglected at any given moment. The problem is invisible to you in the moment. You can't see what you're not seeing. The neglected information doesn't register as missing because it never enters awareness. Your visual experience feels complete and accurate even when it's fragmentary and full of gaps filled by assumptions. Understanding visual neglect doesn't give you the ability to see everything. Attention limitations are fundamental and unavoidable, but awareness helps you compensate. You can check more carefully, look multiple times, systematically scan, and avoid overconfidence about what you've seen. You can recognize situations where visual neglect is especially dangerous and take extra precautions. The next time you're certain you checked carefully and didn't see something, consider that visual neglect made it invisible despite being clearly visible. Your eyes saw it, but your brain neglected it. The information was there, but outside your attention spotlight. Don't trust your feeling of complete visual awareness because that feeling is an illusion created by a brain that's constantly neglecting most of what your eyes take in. Most people go through life never realizing how much they're not seeing. They trust their vision completely and assume their awareness matches the visual information available. They don't know about visual neglect, so they never compensate for it. They miss critical information while feeling confident they're observing carefully. Subscribe to discover more ways your perception fails while making you confident it's working perfectly.